Welcome to Three Takes. I'm Ashana.
I'm Manali.
I'm Mona.
Three women.
Three generations.
One family, unpacking the questions we all ask.
So the other day, me, my sister, and my mom, we were having our daily FaceTime conversations. And something that came up was just confidence in our social lives, our work lives, and just in our community as well. And sometimes we lose or gain confidence just depending on what we're feeling, and also just this whole act of comparison culture. It's everywhere, whether you're scrolling through your feed or you're just seeing what other people are doing. And so that's what we wanted to talk about today in terms of how do we tackle comparison culture.
There is a concept in psychology called social comparison theory. It basically says that we figure out what we are by comparing ourselves to other people, our success, looks, abilities, everything. And actually, it was introduced by a psychologist named Leon Festinger years ago, but it's even more relevant now in the social media age. So I think the way he has defined it, that there are two kinds of comparison, like upward comparison, when we look at people who seem to be doing better, that can motivate us or make us feel inadequate. So that's your upward comparison. And there is a downward comparison. When we look at people who have it worse, that can make us feel grateful or maybe a little too comfortable to do much or motivate ourselves. And you can read about it. There's a really good articles which we will list in show notes. So if you want to dig deeper, you can read them as well. So the comparison isn't really a bad thing. It's how are we using the comparison? Am I comparing to grow or am I judging myself and feeling worst?
Well, I think that's where there might be generational differences. I think I look at comparison culture more as the negative, that there's more insecurities that come out of it. And maybe that's just a mindset shift of the word itself. But what do you guys think when you just think in general of the concept of comparison culture?
I think about like people who I really admire and look up to. Take the sports world, for instance, right? So like in tennis, in men's tennis specifically, the last two names that have dominated the sport in the last year are Jannik Sinner and Carlos Alcaraz. And they talk a lot in their press interviews about different ways that they compare each other's games. And as a result, they use that to fuel themselves and to motivate themselves to be better. So in some sense, I think people can enhance their own performance at something by comparing themselves to somebody else. You have to balance that with not tying your self-worth to what other people are doing, in my opinion. And that's where comparison culture can become very dangerous in some ways, especially with like vulnerable teenagers and people who are still just trying to find their own identity and own self.
So when I was growing up, I think comparison happened more about school or family gatherings, okay. Oh, she's getting a better grade. Why can't you make A, B, like those kind of a thing? Or, who got a TV, who got a phone. But it was really not intentionally to make you feel worse. It was to help you to promote your desire to do better. But I think in this highlight reel and era with Facebook, Instagram and Pinterest, things have changed. I feel like what used to help people inspire progress now often steals peace and start effective other thing, the mental health, the comparison, feeling down.
Yeah, it seems like what I heard from both of you is from a positive perspective, you guys have both talked about experience of more that upward comparison. That definition that we were talking about earlier is you can also have this comparison of people who motivate you or help you strive to become a better person. And I think that's interesting because you both also mentioned this idea of the digital era is where the negative comparison can happen. And I think that's where for me, I've noticed more of comparison culture having a negative effect on my insecurity or my mental health, because I've grown up having a phone and being on Snapchat or Yik Yak or Instagram. So it's this constant simulation of what are other people doing, whether I even know them or not. And there's almost this huge gap between reality and this utopian world. And it's like a lot of the things I've seen that have maybe not made me feel that great are things that I know I can't necessarily achieve, which then don't make me feel good and then doubt my confidence and brings it down a little bit.
Yeah, so like, how we used to compare people we knew, but now you guys are comparing, and we do too, but people you will never meet. And nothing amplifies that feeling more than in social media, the global scoreboard we really check daily, right? Because it's like you are looking at the reels, TikTok and all of them, we don't even know. And we started seeing ourselves in that and like, oh my gosh, we are not doing that. I think it just kills that confidence, even for what we were doing good also, but then we started suddenly feeling low.
Isn't comparison culture how influencers become influencers? Because in some way, the person who's viewing the influencer either wants to emulate the person, learn from the person, in some way valuing what another person is saying or how another person looks.
Yes, but I guess at what point do you cross the line of then becoming envious?
I think that's specific for each person. Right,
Yeah,
in the
but that's
situation.
what I'm saying is, yes, I think there's a lot of influencers and mentors and models out there. But then I think there have also been times in my life where there are certain people I follow who are influential in what capacity that is, I guess, relative. But that creates a little bit of envy as well.
What we are seeing most of the time, they aren't really real lives. Like, they are highlighted reels, curated, filtered, edited, and, addictive. Like, I will give you an example. Like 3 years back, somebody put for my birthday post a picture of mine, and a friend from India really texted me. And actually, I myself couldn't recognize me with my eyes and everything. And she said, oh my gosh, at 50, you're looking so good. You don't have any wrinkles. Your under eye circles, you don't have. And I'm like, what are you even talking about? And I saw my picture. I couldn't recognize myself. And I said, no, believe me, I have tons of under eye circle. I'm really working hard to flatten my stomach. I really don't look like what you're looking at. And she was like, just this kind of things, people, you really give people that a false impression.
No, that's true. I think I'm just trying to think how the comparison culture is prevalent for the current era of life that I'm in. And I can say, I think when it comes to pregnancy, growing a family, how you raise kids, there's a lot of comparison culture and shaming within that, I would say. I think it's really hard not to compare your life when the rest of your friends are having kids or pregnant, or, some people are trying to be pregnant but haven't been able to. And I think that's a tough thing to see on social media, I think. I remember when I posted my pregnancy announcement, I waited a while. Like I waited till I was 24 weeks into pregnancy, but I just wanted to be so mindful of friends and people in my inner circle who I know have been trying and it hasn't, happened for them for whatever reason. And people are happy for you, but at the same time, like, people want that for themselves too. And everyone is in a different phase of this, right? So like some of my friends have multiple kids at this point. And the other part of it too is now my whole algorithm is just like taking care of babies and pregnancy. And I see people and it's hard not to compare how someone else looks during pregnancy and how you look during pregnancy. Your body completely changes. And I think that is really tough to navigate. And I do think it's important to set boundaries. Like there are times where I just won't go on my social media because I know the whole algorithm is just going to be baby stuff.
I actually really appreciated what you just said. And I think there was something specific that you said where that with where you are at in your life stage, people are probably comparing themselves to you, but you are also comparing yourselves to others. So it's constant. It's not like it just comes to an end. And I think that's a really good point of when we compare ourselves to other people, those people are also comparing themselves to other people as well. And I think that's very true in my life right now of being in my 20s, which is a decade of so many different things with people in such different stages of life. Some people in relationships, some people single, some people trying to navigate their careers, some people starting a business, getting married, starting a family. There's so many things that happen in your 20s. How do you not compare with what's going on?
And how do you not feel that you're behind in certain ways? Like if there's certain aspects of your life that you don't feel like are quite up to par of your peer group, regardless of social media or not, it's like you still keep in touch with your close friends outside of social media, right? You meet them, you can meet them in person, they tell you about their lives, they tell you about updates. I don't know, I think it's an instinct almost to compare your life in a way with theirs.
So comparison really doesn't stop when we log off or it's just the social media. It happens everywhere. Work, personal life, leadership, it's everywhere. So I think social media is probably can be a big part, but I think comparison in general is everywhere. But I also think, Manali, one point you just made that, you were saying that, when you see that how automatically you start comparing, it's very natural. It is natural, but I think a lot of time we start to run somebody else's race, right? Like it's not for us, right? It's not right time for us. There's so many other factors, but I think we forget about that and start seeing in them.
I think we've all talked about different experiences we've had with comparison culture. And I think this question about how do we tackle comparison culture is something that is a very complex question to answer and is so dependent on everyone. But maybe we can try to talk about in our experiences, have there been things that we have done to help tackle, or do we have questions for each other on tackling it?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. So if we all know that comparison is a very natural process, so how do we really stop doing it, or at least how do we start seeing a little bit of a joy and happiness in that, right? So I think I can tell for myself that I think there's a lot of mindset shift you have to, see that, okay, what are the things we can adopt? What can the habit we can do? And then I cannot be it's like running someone else's race and wondering why I am tired. Maybe this is really not for me. There's a lot of mindset shift you have to do. I will say that there is one particular book actually it is sitting in front of me, Caroline Miller's book about creating your best life. And she has also done masters in positive psychology. And her book I read in 2 of my classes. It really helped up that how you can find the happiness. So there are many exercises in that, which has really helped me to figure it out, how I can really stop comparison and start being happy within me.
Can you talk a bit about the exercises you've done?
Yeah, so one of them is called the BAT form, My Blessings, Accomplishment, and Talent and Strength, which is developed by Caroline Adams Miller, who has wrote a really amazing book, Creating Your Best Life. It is a research-supported exercise builds. It's a form. It's in a form, at least the way I did it, in a handwritten form. This exercise builds self-esteem, self-efficacy, and the self-confidence to do what it takes to succeed and how to be happy, So that particular form, it starts with blessings. Big and little things I'm grateful for. That is your blessing aspect. Then accomplishment. Big and little things I got done today or accomplished in the past. That's your second. And the third part is positive talent, strengths, and traits. Big and little thing I am good at and that people like about me. That has really helped me because what happened is that we started watching and observing other people so much that we forget that little things we are grateful for, we have achieved, and we have the talent to do it. So that really keep reminding me that no, when you compare, think about yourself, what you are grateful for, what you have done, and what you have to do more in the future also.
To build off of that, and I think that's a very useful exercise to do, is it sounds like a way to tackle comparison culture is essentially positive self-talk and hyping yourself up.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think positive self-talk and hyping yourself up are tools. I also think something we talked about in episode 6 of friendship and episode 10 of social media related to friendship is also boundary setting. Of sometimes we know when we're doom scrolling and it's not benefiting us. And I have now tried to instill where instead of the first thing I do when I wake up is going on social media to see what other people are doing, is I'll do my New York Times puzzles, because that's a better use of my time than to see what happened in the last 24 hours and then compare and start my day that way. So I think for me, as someone where social media has been the dominant factor to my comparison culture, I've tried to tackle it where really being intentional on when I'm using social media, depending on my mood.
I also think something that I heard recently, and don't laugh, you know Dylan Efron, the guy, like Zac Efron's brother?
The one on Dancing with the Stars?
Yeah. So Dylan Efron is like, basically, he did a lot of producing work. He was lower tier in like the Hollywood studio production, and he loves being outdoors. So he does a lot of extreme sports. He does a lot of rock climbing, all that stuff. And what he was saying is that people would ask him like, oh, like, would you compare yourself to your brother who's this celebrity, movie star, like all these things? And the way that Dylan answered that question is actually like, I saw what his life was, and I realized that that kind of fame, that level of celebrity, like, I don't need that to be happy. He said, I'm very content with a job that makes an annual salary of $70K and also have the flexibility to go outside, to be outside with nature, to do all of these extreme sports things, to challenge myself. I just thought that was a really mature and interesting way of framing what's important to you in your life and basically asking yourself, what is it that will make me content in my life, regardless of what other people are doing, regardless of if I have like a super famous brother, like what makes me happy internally? And I don't think we ask ourselves that question enough.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to, even in a lot of the episodes we've released, at the end of the day, your values should never be compromised in anything that you're doing. So yeah, good job, Dylan Efron. That was a very insightful thing.
And also, I think how we handle and accept comparison. So some people compare and some people just ask questions. So I will give you an example, like between Minali and Ishana, so many people will ask because Minali chose the medicine route. People will come and ask me, oh, that will be nice. Now Ishana has a role model. She's going to become a physician. And I'm like, absolutely not. She has absolutely no interest. Like, so what happened is that people compare the sibling to sibling. People compare friends to friends. So sometimes you have to say, it's not like, okay, then you stay to your ground. Like, don't feel bad. I'm like, I hope Ishana doesn't become physician, which of course she chose not to be. Like, there is so many other things people has interest in. But a lot of time people just assume because the older sibling did that, right?
Yeah.
Or they will come and they will say, oh, you know what? Ishana is playing such a good tennis. I'm sure Minali must be even doing better so just because she's older, no, she doesn't have as much interest in that. Like, so what I'm saying is that
or talent, quite honestly.
Yeah.
It's like some people just are better at certain things.
Yeah. It's so true that you say that. Actually, the sibling comparison thing is a whole different topic, and not to like diverge, but I remember that when we were in the same like middle school or had some of the same teachers, like some of them were like, oh, like you're Minali's younger sister. And I was like, no, I'm Ishana. Like, it's a very different identity and comparison. And like, you took IB Spanish, I did AP French. Like, there was no comparisons. I think in like our activities that we even did, like you were speech and debate, I was more tennis. You did piano, I was like not really into the piano stuff. And I think Mama and Papa did a good job of always like separating our interests and also knowing what we like and don't like. And I'm curious that for you, you've talked about pregnancy and you're also having twins. And that is a whole other topic of twins are always looked at pairs and together. Have you and Rahul thought about comparison culture regarding the twins?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked to other twins about this just to see like how their parents navigated raising them and creating individuality while at the same time knowing that the twin bond is really special. And actually, I learned that some schools require that twins be in separate classrooms. And I think it makes sense because I think that allows them to have their own set of friends, to grow individually. I've been listening to a lot of parenting podcasts recently too. And I also think it's important that, you know, sometimes the twins may not be invited to like everything, like for birthday parties, right? Like one person might have a friend that invites them to something and one person might have to stay at home. That's life. Or another teacher might allow someone to wear a watch in the classroom and someone else's teacher doesn't. That's life. That's too bad. Like you can't make everything equal or the same. But, you know, this is something I'm just learning about theoretically. I don't know, you know, how ultimately we're going to end up implementing this. But I do think it's important to have individual attention and focus for each child and not just lump them as the twins are doing X, Y, Z.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's a lot how we really bring like the kids in the parenting also, because I think it needs to start from home. If we parents start comparing the siblings, like the kids and all of them, and then outside will do, because then it will affect more those parents because they themselves are already doing at home. Like, you know, so for example, or even the friend circle, well, Ishana might have a interest which his other friends don't have it. So why do even compare? Because they have some other talent and strength which Ishana has. And the same with my friends and all of them, or Minali. Like, so I think in general, whether it's our work there, I think we just have to not try to wear somebody else's shoes.
Yeah, and also understand that everyone progresses in life differently. I mean, just to even talk about the newborn phase, right? Like the twins will probably hit their developmental milestones at different times. So just because one of them might start crawling or start babbling or like eventually start walking first, that doesn't mean we have to say, oh, well, the other twin is delayed. Or, you know, like I think even just starting at the beginning of from birth, like when they're born, they're different people. So they're going to have different life trajectories. They're going to have different time points when they hit certain developmental milestones. And I think that's just part of accepting, you know, but yeah, I don't think it's healthy or really helps in any way to like compare or start stressing out if like one twin doesn't have something that the other does, or siblings or family, or even within friend groups.
Is there anything else we want to talk about in terms of tackling comparison culture? I think we've talked a lot about techniques in terms of gratitude and blessings. We've talked about creating boundaries on social media. That you talked about looking at Dylan Efron as like inspiration to comparison culture. Is there anything else for the listeners that you guys have used or talked about?
No, I think comparison culture, I think start really believing it, like analyzing your own life versus others. Like if you can use that as upward, as an inspiration, I think great, because I think comparison is good at certain extent. But when it started really feeling you, you know, depressed, started feeling you overwhelmed, then realization maybe it needs to stop that or go for help.
I do like learning about the different definitions within comparison culture. So there's like upward comparison culture and downward comparison culture. And I think trying to contextualize when I am comparing myself to someone else, in what direction am I using this comparison? Is it in a positive way that can help me grow, or is it a negative way where it's lowering my self-esteem and putting me down?
One of the things which has helped me, that instead of comparison, like if I see somebody is better and doing, I go and give the compliment. If I know that person, whether it's a work or in that, what happens is that makes me take away that negative emotion. because I genuinely, like, then what happened is that the more you started seeing the positive thing, the more positive you start thinking also. Acknowledging somebody's strength, accomplishment is a good thing.
As we wrap up this episode, there's obviously a lot of scenarios and questions we have about tackling comparison culture. We would love to hear from you all on experiences you faced and maybe methods you used to tackle comparison culture.
Thanks for joining us on 3 Takes. If something we shared sparked a new thought or opened up a conversation with someone you love, we want to hear about it. DM us on Instagram at 3.takes, email us at connect@3takes.com, or visit us at www.3takes.com. And if this episode meant something to you, share it with another mother, daughter, or sister in your life. It's how we grow and keep the stories moving.